ahead and put our hook in the vise, and this is a 3x long hook. I've already put the gold bead on. You could change the gold bead out to be any color that you prefer, but we're just going to go ahead and start our thread behind the bead and put down a good foundation of thread. And then we will cut the tag. And this is the first little extra thing. You don't have to do this. This is not in the original, but we're going to take some ice dub peacock, just like 2 or 3 strands of that. So a very, very small amount. And we are going to make a small dubbing ball at the very back of the hook. And this is basically a crutch, right? So as you're learning how to do this, this is going to help those back tail biots to spread out into a V. You don't have to do this, but I usually do just to ensure the long life of the fly that I'm tying, to make sure that those 2 biots back there don't eventually, after fish and fish and fish, fall on top of each other. So we're going to grab the goose biots, and this is in brown. And as you can see, it's an interesting material if you've never used it. It has kind of like the texture of a fingernail almost. So we're going to take 2 of them. And as you can see, it has a natural curve to it. So we're going to be using that curve and tying it in so it curves away from the hook, right? So this one on this side of us, our face side, is curving towards me. And you're just going to kind of do some loose wraps and then tighten down on it once you kind of get it into place. So you can be somewhat rough with this stuff because it's a durable material, but it is weird to work with. I'm going to tie in the second one cupped away from us this time. Again, I just kind of start farther back and work my way to the little dubbing ball, or the crutch. And we're going to spread those, get them exactly how I want them to stay permanently, and then lock all that down. And then you could come in and just cut off those ends, but I do like this to be a pretty smooth fly, so like I don't have to worry about this being this huge load of thread buildup that I have to do at the end when I tie these biots in this way, because you naturally have a bigger head section just by tying those all down. So got it looking pretty much like what I want it to be looking like. We're going to be using some tinsel. This is a gold. You could use wire, UTC wire, anything like that, but this is more of a classic material, and it's basically an oval, so there's not necessarily a wrong way to tie this in as long as you have the flat side on the hook. Can't imagine you could possibly tie it in any other way, but some people, you never know. And we're going to take, this is peacock curl. This is again just nature spirit stuff, which is some of the best out there. We're going to take our scissors and just chop off those tips. That stuff is really thin and it'll break really easily. So we're just kind of giving ourselves a head start by starting towards the middle of this stuff and tying it in from the bead to the bend of the hook. And we're just going to wrap it up. And it should stay really level, so we're going to have a good body on this fly. It's all going to be nice and flowing smoothly. The peacock is shooting kind of straight out like you want it to. If your peacock is matting down, like it's wrapping itself over itself, then you could try using fewer materials. Just use like 3 rather than, I think I grabbed like 6 or something like that. And if you're using a smaller fly, then you're definitely also going to want to use less peacock. And then we're going to counter rib that peacock with our tinsel. Just make sure that's as evenly spaced as you can get it. And once we get that to the bead, we are going to tie it off. And I like to make a little fairly flat platform here because we still have two things to tie in. And so if that's kind of just a rigid bump, they're not going to tie in as smoothly as if you have this perfect little thread collar essentially behind the bead. Just end up fiddling with the tails still some. You can hardly even see that eye stub bump that we made too, but here we're going to take a feather, and this is on the back half of actually a dry fly hackle. So it's going to give us the legs. So all I just did was expose the feather stem, and now I'm going to tie that in. And I typically go towards the webby side of feathers for my Prince Nymphs. I know more traditionally you would use a stiffer fiber, but I do like the legs to be somewhat of a large feature on this fly because I do think it is a trigger for fish. So I'm just going to do one wrap around. So with this one feather I would be able to tie 3 or 4 of these because this is off the back, like I said, of a dry fly, a Whiting Farms hackle. So do one, just trying to not trap a bunch of those fibers. And come in with the little small scissors, cut that stem. I'm going to just hold everything back with my left hand, and with my right hand I'm going to wrap down on that. That's going to do 2 things: secure that feather into place really well, and then also give me a good tying platform for the very last thing, which is the stripped goose biots. These are just in white, and this is a classic way to do this. Again, just expose 2, and then we'll rip them off. Now, you could come in with both at the same time if you feel comfortable doing that. As long as they're crossed somewhat well, then they'll tie in and stay in well. But if you have problems doing that or with precision, then I would just say do it one at a time, which is what I'll do here. And I'm going to make that wing be about as long as the body of the fly or shorter. So this is like a hair shorter from my angle. Then I'm going to make them have a slight X to them to make sure that they stay spread out and they don't go on top of each other. I'm going to wrap that down. Then I'm going to wrap on top of even the extra portion that was going up in front. I just pulled that back, and that's really going to ensure that these biots stay in place. They don't pull out, which is a problem if you don't do that. And then we're going to make double sure that they don't come out by taking some super glue and putting it on the thread and wrapping that around. That's a really easy way to stay controlled with super glue rather than just dumping it on the fly and getting it in everything. Now we're going to whip finish, and we'll cut that off. And then the last step is cutting off that extra biot, or the butt ends of those. Just come in. I don't care if a little of that is exposed, because it just kind of reminds me that I did that. So if they ever do cross, which they probably never will if you did that right, then I know. But that's it. That is a finished Prince Nymph.